Greg, and what a pleasure it is to welcome all of you to campus and to join you in extending congratulations to those whom we have honored this afternoon, and gratitude to them for their service to Ohio Wesleyan, for their service to the larger society, and for the ways in which they reflect the service offered by everyone in this room, to your alma mater and to the world in which you live, with the foundation of the education that you received here. Our theme today is connections. And over the last several months, we have gathered as alumni and friends of Ohio Wesleyan across the country in numerous settings to talk about connections that matter. And in each of those settings, I've heard people tell me, as we've heard this morning, about the impact of members of this faculty who, during the undergraduate years, helped shape not only an undergraduate education, but a foundation for a life that would follow, that would lead to leadership and service in every sector of our society. And these relationships with the Ohio Wesleyan faculty are connections that matter. I've heard people talk about the impact of classmates, some of whom they knew, as we have heard this afternoon, prior to arrival at Ohio Wesleyan, some of whom they met on the first day on campus, others whom they met along the way, but many of whom became lifelong friends and colleagues, people with whom they have shared the greatest celebratory moments of life and who have been there in the times of the darkest moments of life as well. These too are connections that matter. On campus, we're thinking today about the role of connections in the education that we offer our students. We want our students, as you did, to receive here the foundations of a liberal arts education that gives them a solid introduction to a discipline where they learn the content and the methods of that discipline, and where they are challenged to think critically and analytically, as we have heard from those on the stage today, but where they develop other capacities for leadership through their education here. The capacity to shape an argument and present it in a compelling way. The capacity to examine a complex problem from the perspective of multiple disciplines. The capacity to work with a variety of individuals from diverse backgrounds in this multicultural world in which today's students will live and lead. The capacity to develop a set of values that provide a foundation for making decisions and exercising leadership. These are the capacities of a liberal arts education. We want our students to make connections that matter in their education, so we talk about connecting the classroom to the world, connecting theory to practice. We want our students to have one foot in the classroom where they benefit from the liberal arts education you receive, and another foot in the real world where they gain practical experiences that make those connections between theory and practice. We want our students to make connections between the classroom and the world, between Central Ohio and places distant, near, and far away. We want our students to understand that these are connections that matter in their education and in the lives that they will live beyond Ohio Wesleyan. So our faculty last year implemented, it's been in development for 4 years, the OWU Connection Curriculum Initiative. It establishes networks of courses to help students examine complex problems from the perspective of multiple disciplines. They've established travel learning courses that allow students to take a course on campus and then travel into the world with the professor of that course, connecting theory to practice and connecting the campus to the world. As we sit in Gray Chapel here on this afternoon, we have students and faculty in Bolivia, in Brazil, in the Galapagos Islands, in Haiti, in Ireland, in Scotland, in England, and in numerous other places where they have traveled following coursework they have done on this campus this semester. These are the opportunities that students have today to experience connections that matter. We want our students to understand the connections between what happens in the classroom and what happens elsewhere on campus. Our students learn when they are in the classroom, but they also learn in the residence halls. They learn when they participate in the award-winning volunteer program about which you have heard this afternoon. They learn, as a third of them do, when they participate in intercollegiate athletics. How about the Bishops this year? Yeah, how about NCAC championships in football, in men's soccer, in men's basketball, in men's lacrosse, in both indoor and outdoor women's track and field. The men's track and field team finished 7th in the national meet, and they will compete outdoors, both men and women, next week. Several coaches having been named Coach of the Year this year, our students learn when they participate in varsity athletics. It's interesting to note that our athletic conference presents a Student Athlete of the Year award. It has done so for 4 years. It's presented to the student athlete in the conference who has the highest athletic performance, combined with academic accomplishment, combined with leadership. There are 10 schools in the athletic conference, 8 awards have been presented, and 5 of them have been awarded to battling bishops from Ohio Wesleyan. That's remarkable, and that's the connection that matters. Our students learn when they participate in Greek life. When I arrived 5 years ago, about a quarter of our students were affiliated with a fraternity or a sorority. Today, about 38% of our students are affiliated with a fraternity or a sorority. In those settings, they learn the values of leadership, of scholarship, of service, and of camaraderie with people who will be their lifelong friends, well beyond Ohio Wesleyan, as so many of you experienced in your time here. Our students learn when they write for the transcript. They learn when they participate in student organizations. They learn when they emerge as student leaders. They learn when they make the connections between the education in the classroom and the education beyond the classroom. These two are connections that matter. Some of you are back here for the first time in 5 years. I met someone last night who was back here for the first time in 60 years. Things have changed. But let's just go with the last 5 years. I hope you'll take a chance to visit the Meek Aquatic and Recreation Center that opened 3 years ago. I hope you'll see the other improved athletic facilities. I hope you'll see the moral strength and conditioning room in the basement of Edwards Gym. I know you have seen the Jaywalk and the improvements contributed by the classes of 1959 on this side of the street and the classes of 61, 62, and 63 on the other side. Let's give it up for the class of 63 and the 63 Commons. I love it when our students are here, and I love it when you are here, but Sunday night when nobody is here, I'm going to go to the Commons and sit in one of those Adirondack chairs and take a deep breath. And I won't tell you what I'll have in my hand. It is great to have you here. It is great to think about the improvements that have been made on campus. How about Stuyvesant Hall? Were you there last night? It is an extraordinary improvement that reminds us of the importance of the residential campus and of the residential facilities. I'm going to steal a line from Mildred Newcomb. Some of you have heard me say this before. When we had the dedication in the fall, Mildred was here as a person who had lived in the building shortly after it opened as a student, and then as many of you were here as a member of the staff in the 50s, perhaps early 60s. She recalled that a champagne toast in the Milligan Hub, which you remember as the smoker and which is now the central gathering place of the building, she recalled how one night she was sitting at the front desk. Remember the front desk, and gentlemen, you had to check in and have a call made for the woman you were there to visit. And she was sitting at the front desk, and she looked out the window and saw charging up the Stuyvesant Hill 2 fraternities full of men. She said, "What was I to do?" She said, "I rang every room in the building." And as we celebrated that evening, as I reflected on what Mildred said, and we had people in the room that evening in the Milligan Hub coming from every decade in the history of Stuyvesant Hall, I was reminded of the importance of the residential campus and the places where our students live and work, and the connections that exist between the classroom and learning and the other parts of the campus, and of the continuity that occurs over the decades. Stuyvesant opened in 1931 as a building for first-year women. In the 70s it became co-ed. This year it's all returning students. They want to be in that new restored building. We'll put first-year students in another building and let them wait a year or two to have the pleasure of Stuyvesant Hall. But it is still a place as it was when it opened in 1931, where relationships are formed, where connections that matter come to be, and where our students form living and learning communities that enrich their educational experiences here at Ohio Wesleyan. Much has been accomplished, but much more remains to do. Can you imagine with me the restoration of Merrick Hall? Merrick Hall was opened in 1873. It was envisioned in the 1850s as a science center. Very few liberal arts institutions in this country in the 1850s were envisioning buildings exclusively devoted to the teaching of the science. Ohio Wesleyan was on the front edge, and to this day has one of the premier undergraduate science programs in the nation's liberal arts arena. The war got in the way, but in the late 60s the fundraising resumed and the building opened in 1873. It's been vacant for 30 years. I can imagine the restoration of that building with the first floor housing the OWU Connection as the place where students go to learn where they can go to make connections that matter, where they can learn about where to go for international and off-campus experiences, where they can go for internship opportunities, where they can go for volunteer service, where they can go to complete the kind of rigorous undergraduate research that will advance them. I can imagine the second floor classrooms being restored with all of the grandeur of the 19th century and all of the technology and furnishings that enhance the pedagogies and the learning of the 21st century. And how about the third floor? 22-foot ceilings, ornate Gothic arches, grand windows looking out to the north on the town and to the south on the historic academic campus. It could be the most elegant space on campus. Can you imagine the restoration of Merrick Hall? Or let's go over to Edwards Gymnasium, built in 1904 as Branch Rickey was graduating. A magnificent historical jewel. The gym on the third floor could be restored to its original grandeur, where Ray Slayball hit shots from all over the court, I'm told. It could be restored. The second floor could become a state-of-the-art center for athletic offices, helping our recruitment of student athletes, which, as I mentioned earlier, compose about a third of our student body. We'd like to take the nearby Pfeiffer Gymnasium and establish the fitness center for which this campus has waited so long, and the dance studio for which this campus has waited so long. We have a tremendous program in theater and dance with a fabulous new instructor in dance, but we need a studio on campus rather than the one next to Clancy's Bar on Sandusky Street. Can you imagine the restoration of Edwards Gym? How about this room? How about the organ? This is the first time to see the organ. Can you imagine the restoration of Gray Chapel? How about some air conditioning? It's not too bad today, but it could be. How about an elevator? How about some restrooms on this floor? This is a grand facility. This building would be the envy of any small college in the country. The second and third floors house our departments of modern foreign languages. These are critically important to an education that is designed to prepare the next generation of moral leaders for a global society that seeks to make connections between theory and practice in a global society. Our students need to be conversant in multiple languages and to be candid. The offices and teaching spaces of our Department of Modern Foreign Languages are among the weakest on campus. Can you imagine the restoration of this grand historic building? My imagination runs away with me. I could go longer, but I think I've given you a little bit of a taste of some things that we could think about together.